So today the unemployment statistics came out and the unemployment rate has gone higher. So here are the statistics. Overall unemployment on the expanded definition, which is a more accurate definition because it includes discouraged job seekers, whereas the other definition doesn't include discouraged job seekers, but they're still looking for jobs. They're still looking for jobs, but they're still unemployed. So overall unemployment on the expanded definition, 41.9%. Unemployment of Black people, 46.3%. Unemployment of colored people, 30.2%. Unemployment of Indian people, 20.7%. Unemployment of white people, 10.6%. So Black people remain more disproportionately unemployed compared to the other racial groups in South Africa. Women unemployment is sitting at 45.5%. Men unemployment is at 36.8%. So you can see that there's also a discrepancy there on the basis of gender. So there are discrepancies on the basis of gender. When you come to the education level, 73.6% of all unemployed people have a matric or less than a matric. Between the ages of 15 to 24, 3.6 million young people are not in education, employment, or training. These people are typically known as the NEET. One of the most important numbers that I care about when it comes to the unemployment data is the long-term unemployment. Long-term unemployment went up from 3.3 million people in long-term unemployment in 2014 to 6.2 million people in 2024, close to double long-term unemployment. And long-term unemployment is people who have been in unemployment for a year or longer. And as a percentage of the unemployed, it went up from 66% of the unemployed to 75% of the unemployed. So this is one of the numbers that is very difficult to cook or overlook. It's very difficult to cook or overlook because from time to time, politicians will want to use a snapshot, right, of the unemployment data. They'll say, unemployment, this is the data as it is now. Maybe 100,000 jobs are added, maybe 500,000 jobs are added, but it's clearer to see the status of the unemployment problem when you zoom out, when you take a long-term view, when you take a giraffe view, so to speak. So when you look at this with the right lens, the long-term unemployment data is the one that shows that unemployment is getting worse and long-term unemployment in particular is getting worse, from 3.3 million in 2014 to 6.2 million. So that's in absolute numbers. But even as percentages, you can see that the numbers have gone up. By age, young people between the ages of 15 to 24, the unemployment rate is almost 70% at 69.6 on the expanded definition. Adults between the 25 and 35, 48.7. I don't call people between the ages of 25 to 35 youth or young people. Those are adults. And the unemployment at the age of 25 to 30, almost half, 48.7%. By sector, there are 11.5 million jobs in the formal sector, 3 million jobs in the informal sector. There are 941,000 jobs in agriculture farm workers, and there are almost 1.2 million people working in households as cleaners, helpers, that kind of thing. So between agriculture and households, you have 2 million of the jobs that are there in the 16 million jobs that are being counted. There's a worker classification that I also think is relevant to be aware of. Elementary workers. Elementary workers are workers basically who have a grade 10 or less, who do simple tasks in their work. In the elementary worker category, 28.15 of all of the workers out of the 16 million are in elementary work. 28.15. This is a very high number, and in fact, it indicates the number of workers who are working at minimum wage or close to minimum wage. So when we talk about unemployment, we often just talk about the raw numbers, how many people have jobs, how many people don't have jobs. But we need to also talk about quality of jobs, because that speaks to the skill level and that speaks to the income. It's important to improve the skill level of the workforce so that they can earn more income, so that they can have more buying power. And that is what creates economic growth, because as people have more buying power, they can buy more consumer goods and consumer durable goods, right? And semi-durable goods. And that is really when you start to see an uptick in local production, local manufacturing, right? That is when you start to see more people entering the lower middle class or just below the lower middle class. And you need to reduce the number of elementary workers. So that's the first big story of the day. The second story is, you remember when Thabo Mbeki started campaigning for the ANC, went to Soweto. It was a big event. He was asked lots of questions about, but last year you said that you're not going to campaign for criminals, etc., etc. Then he was like, no, I'm out here, I'm on the streets. Well, it turns out that Thabo Mbeki has now suspended his campaigning for the ANC. He said he's got to go to some Africa events and coordinate some talks in the DRC, etc., Sudan. But apparently, according to, this is a story that has been reported by Business Live, what they're saying is that the suspension of his participation in the ANC election campaign came after his visit to KwaZulu-Natal. Those close to Mbeki said his effort in the province left a bitter taste. The program left him feeling a bit exploited, and he also felt that some corrupt ANC leaders tried to hijack his efforts. This is what was said by a former KwaZulu-Natal ANC member. And then earlier on Monday, those close to Mbeki suggested that he was apprehensive that the same would happen in the Eastern Cape. Another insider speaking to the Business Day said that the former president was disheartened after his visit to KwaZulu-Natal and that he became unavailable. So he was going to be available, but he became unavailable after his office raised questions about who approved his program in the Eastern Cape and who he would be flanked with and who he would have to engage with. So when Mbeki made the first announcement, he actually made a YouTube video. It's there if you go check the videos. Talking about the comments that he made last year, because they were very harsh and heavy comments. He said that, the people were justified in their criticism of the ANC, that he could not campaign with criminals and for criminals, and also said that he had legitimate concerns about money laundering and the money that was found at Phala Phala. And he also said that the issues that were raised in the Section 89 independent panel report were valid. So it was very surprising to then see, the same Thabo Mbeki who said all of these things now saying, listen, I don't mind, I'm happy to campaign, and part of that may have been driven by a deep resentment of Jacob Zuma and a deep ideological difference in politics between him and Jacob Zuma. And he was maybe willing to overlook many of the issues that he raised just last year to try to help the organization that he has been a loyal member of from day one, with a proviso. Not a proviso, a caveat, so to speak. Because the caveat is, in as much as we know that Mbeki stayed within the ANC, many people, such as Professor J.J. Tabane, have said that he was instrumental in the founding of COPE. And COPE, as we know, challenged Jacob Zuma's ANC at the time and actually got 7% of the vote. And, ANC could have done much better if there was no COPE. So even though there may be these tensions between him and Zuma, some of the rhetoric around, you must be disciplined. How can you go and do this? How can you go and start a new party, and challenge the ANC? Some of that stuff never felt genuine, but it looks like he's frustrated. He's not happy with everything that has happened and he will not be campaigning. He's still taking questions from the media, but it does seem as if he's not going to be happy to go to provinces like the Eastern Cape, because that's where also a lot of corruption has been happening. A lot of people who have been shady or implicated in shady things have been placed. So the Constitutional Court has issued new directives in the IEC case over the eligibility of former President Jacob Zuma contesting a parliamentary seat. And what they've said is they want clarity from the parties on, excluding the amici curiae, who are the friends of the court. They want from the parties a discussion around the issue of bias. And they had to hand in those papers today by 5 p.m. So by the time you see that, this was recorded on Tuesday, and you may see it on Tuesday or Wednesday, but they're required to provide their papers on the 14th of May by 5 p.m. And the issue of bias is one of the issues that was traversed by Advocate Dalimpofu and was raised, and he raised some newspaper articles to show that the IEC was arbitrating a matter that they had already predetermined. And in so doing, because they had already made a conclusion before the matter was even heard or the objection was even filed, that compromises them and makes them conflicted. And as a result of that, that is a poison within their litigation, so to speak. And if indeed the court thinks so, then they will just have to rule in favor of Jacob Zuma. So this may be a way for the court to try to find a way out of the conundrum that they created. I'm just pushing this to the side because I feel like my tie is not showing. But this may be a way for the court to deal with the conundrum without necessarily dealing with some of the deeper issues. So that's what's happening there. Now, the IEC, Simon Babolo, had a press briefing today where he addressed some of the issues that people have been worried about. Now, I don't know whether the sound is carrying. I'll deal with this tie issue, but I want you to see my red tie. It's part of the aesthetic because it goes with this. You know? Anyway, don't worry about the tie situation. I'll figure that out. So, Simon Mabolo had two interesting statements that he made. Number one pertained to the ZANU PF and whether or not the ZANU PF will be an observer in the election. And this is what he said, basically.
Yes, indeed. We did receive a letter from Mr. Zungula complaining about the presence of, the alleged presence of ZANU PF. We have nothing to do really as a commission with their presence in the country. ZANU PF is not an accredited observer mission. The commission has not approved them, has not accredited them. So they won't be observing these elections. And communication in that regard has been made available to Mr. Zungula.
It's important, I think, for him to have made that statement because people were concerned. ZANU PF is not a democratic organization by any stretch of the imagination. And last year, the SADC election observer mission was critical of how they ran the campaign. And many people have been critical of ZANU PF in various elections, 2002, 2008, 2013, 2018. There's always irregularities. And the leadership of the party has been implicated in atrocities. They've been implicated in being part of a currency manipulation, fraud case with the gold mafia documentary that you remember from Al Jazeera. So when there were reports that the ANC is hosting and inviting ZANU PF, many people were concerned, and the ATM party even sent a letter getting clarity from the office of the IEC. But the IEC has said that no ZANU PF as far as they know. But that's not to say that the ANC is not consulting with ZANU PF, working with ZANU PF behind the scenes, because they've confirmed on their side that they did extend an invitation to ZANU PF. ZANU PF is a sister party of the ANC, so they're well within their rights to speak to their sister party. But whenever you hear the name ZANU PF, you do need to be worried, especially in a democracy, because they ain't about that life. So that's the first announcement that he made. The second announcement that he made is something that I've been thinking about, but I didn't have an answer, but now I have an answer, is whose face is going to be on the ballot. Jacob Zuma's face is going to be on the ballot either way, because he is the leader of the party, MK. He is the registered leader of the party and he's going to be on the ballot. And this may explain why Jabulani Khumalo was now jumping around trying to reclaim the position of, leader of the party, because if indeed he did take some money from some people to try to undermine Zuma, then he was trying then to remove Zuma from the ballot. This is what Simon Mabolo had to say about this whole thing.
The issue about the outcomes of the Concord matter involving the erstwhile president, Mr. Zuma, that the outcome will have no bearing on the ballot paper. As matters stand, Mr. Zuma is the registered party leader of MK Party. And to that extent, he is the person whose photograph is on the ballot paper for MK. Now, whether he is a candidate or not a candidate, it has no bearing on that aspect, because you are on the ballot paper if you are a registered leader of a political party, irrespective of whether you are a candidate or not a candidate in that election. So there won't be any impact really in respect of the ballot paper.
So you can see Zuma will be the face. So it almost renders the Constitutional Court judgment, part of it, inconsequential in a sense. And then that also kind of relates to the urgency. Why do I say that? My whole issue or thinking around the Zuma going to parliament thing is, number one, I don't think that Jacob Zuma actually wants to go to parliament. I think he wants to reserve the right to go to parliament. But I think it was important for Jacob Zuma to indicate to all of his supporters that he's the leader, he's going to be running the show, he's going to be going to parliament, because if he's not going, some people may not vote. So you want to maintain the theoretical understanding that Jacob Zuma is going to go to parliament. The reason why I say he may not go is because he may lose his presidential privileges. And there's a legal question that's open-ended about that. I've seen some scholars begin to debate whether or not that's true. But we'll see whether or not that is and what decision he makes. But I think he did want to maintain that energy and excitement and hope that, yes, Zuma will go to parliament. So if you automatically disqualify him, he's not going to go. But for many people, when they go to vote and they see his face there, they're still going to vote for MK. So this renders part of that discussion moot. And it was an interesting announcement and a good question that was asked. It's very relevant. So Zuma's face will be on the ballot. The whole time that this has been happening, I've been wondering, hasn't the IEC already printed these ballots? Because to print them much closer to the election would be, cutting it thin. You want to have all your materials ready to go days before the election. So they printed them. Zuma's the leader of the party. They've clarified that they're not entertaining Jabulani Khumalo's anything. Zuma's the leader, and that's where things stand. So that's an update on all of the big stories that came out today on Tuesday. If you guys like these summaries and commentary on the go, please let me know. Please double tap, press like, comment, share, follow the channel if you haven't. We're going to try to grow the channel, try to do this more regularly, give you analysis live and direct from Mighty Jamie TV. It's been a pleasure. Let's have a conversation. Which of these stories do you feel most strongly about? For me, long-term unemployment continues to be a big issue and a big indicator of the extent of the crisis in the South African economy. Till the next one,